And of course, this takes me back to and reminds me of Star Wars. The season finale of Invincible, which was overall an excellent show. And I thought I was getting burnt out on superheroes because there's so many shows. There's a ridiculous amount of shows with superheroes, each with their own unique ideas, but still regarding superheroes and people with superhuman strength and abilities. However, I'm not really getting tired of them because there are different twists on them, just like there are twists on people without superpowers. So this kind of thing can keep going provided there are new and exciting takes on them. And I thought Invincible, I don't know if it was new, but it was definitely an exciting take on it. You know, it's kind of in line with like the Watchmen or Watchmen or Boys, where it's superheroes, but they certainly have human qualities and, for lack of a better term, flaws. I sound like Omni-Man, flawed. Meanwhile, he was really flawed. But the season finale, it brings me back to Star Wars, where it's like the father and son battle, and then the temptation that the father brings. I don't know if Omni-Man really tempted Invincible at all. You didn't see that. He did try and make the case. He did try and twist the logic around. He did try and use this superiority complex, saying, well, we have to kill a bunch of them to save them. But then you saw that conflict in Omni-Man. That was the most fascinating. And then, of course, at the very end, where Seth Rogen came out and said, this doesn't happen, but it can leave an opening. It just reminded me, it probably did Star Wars a little better than at least the Star Wars prequels did in Anakin's temptation to turn to the dark side. While I can understand why Anakin turned to the dark side, it was kind of rushed. Same kind of thing regarding in the sequel trilogy regarding Rey's temptation. It wasn't that heavy. They didn't really flesh that out. She was tempted a bit, but you never really got a sense of her wavering. But Omni-Man's case could have been, it wasn't exploited much at all. I guess maybe there wasn't time for Invincible to feel tempted, or he was just so grounded in Earth that he didn't, at least for this season, didn't feel that temptation. Maybe I'm hoping when there's a second season, they could explore something like that even more. The conflict not only between Invincible and Omni-Man, but the conflict between Invincible and himself, where he comes from. I would imagine Omni-Man and maybe other Viltrumites will try and exploit that with Invincible. So overall, Invincible was great because the show explored the human qualities of the characters, even though they have these superpowers. And you throughout these 8 episodes, you got to know the Grayson family, and I'm guessing Grayson is a tip of the hat to Dick Grayson, who is Robin from Batman and Robin. And the voice acting was so good. Like, a lot of these voices sounded familiar, so I would always hit pause because Amazon Prime has, who's playing who. And first is Yeun playing Invincible, and I first heard of him in The Walking Dead, and he's gone on to receive an Oscar nomination for his role in Minari. I haven't seen that yet, but it's on my list. But I would imagine his association with Robert Kirkman of The Walking Dead. At this point, maybe Kirkman just said, "Hey, Steven, can you do me a solid, please?" And I'm sure it was a mutual. That's what I'm guessing. It was a mutual understanding. So he was the lead in Invincible because he played Invincible. You have Sandra Oh. You have let me pull up the cast. J.K. Simmons, who of course played Omni-Man, and J.K. Simmons is terrifying. I remember him from Oz and just in Whiplash. It'll be nice to, at least, as Commissioner Gordon, he's kind of a good guy. It'd be nice to see him play a nice man every once in a while, because he could be a terrifying villain. And I thought, maybe with Invincible, he can play someone good, but obviously is like the most evil. And what's so terrifying, not only with J.K. Simmons' voice portrayal, just the character of Omni-Man, what's so terrifying is just the power matched with the ideology, which is very obviously very, very deadly. And on the opposite end is someone like Superman, who the power and ideology, his Superman's ideology is as powerful as his physical power. So with Superman, it's I know I'm so strong and I know I can do anything, and it's how he can use that for good, and that struggle with him, because you can't really defeat Superman. I mean, unless you have kryptonite, but for the most part you can. And Omni-Man is virtually indestructible. He had moments where you thought he was down, but then he came back because that's how strong he is. But that battle between Omni-Man and Invincible, there was the physical battle, which Omni-Man, eventually was able to handle, but then Omni-Man did not win the emotional battle where that the human quality, the time he spent on Earth seemed to have changed him. The bond he created with his son, the bond he created with his wife, and when he was yelling at Invincible about how useless humans are, it was almost like he was trying to convince himself, because even though he killed probably thousands of people, there was a part of him that really believed the good in humanity, and probably most likely was the reason why he abandoned his post, because there was a conflict with what he thought was his identity. And when that identity comes into conflict with a lot of people, it's a hard battle to have. So it's easy just to kind of give in and go back to your identity. It's harder to change. And then this is it's all relative. It all depends, because there are some identities that are very much destructive, and other identities that aren't destructive. And the real conundrum is finding within yourself how much harm you're doing, or trying to convince yourself that you're doing less harm. And I always say in this podcast, why information and why knowledge is so powerful, because it can help you make those decisions. Hopefully you have those core beliefs and values where you can use that as an anchor, as something to ground you. But if your core beliefs and values tend towards the destruction of people, especially the destruction of the most vulnerable, which Omni-Man, everybody was very vulnerable to Omni-Man. Even the most powerful superheroes was a vulnerable species to Omni-Man and the Viltrumites. So it's trying to maintain those core beliefs where you don't want to harm people, and then giving people space and hopefully time with the with the means to make that change. And individually, it's a very hard thing to do when someone is so bogged down in a belief and in an ideology. Through policy, it's much easier and much more effective. So if you have a policy that promotes the least amount of harm, the most amount of freedom, and it's always that balance that makes humans such a fascinating bunch, aren't we? So I think Invincible really played that off well. The show Invincible, and then also just the character development of Invincible. How he was able to maintain that, and I think talking about grounding and talking about core beliefs, it goes back to the love of his mother and the love of who he thought his father was. He was raised in a very loving home, very much a privileged background, didn't really have to want for anything, but he had that foundation of love and caring from his mother, from a realistic standpoint. And even, I would argue, from Omni-Man, from a realistic standpoint, even though it took Omni-Man a while to really warm up to that. It seems that he did, which was, again, you saw that during the baseball scene where he started cheering for his son, and that was a genuine thing. And you know, and again, when Omni-Man was arguing with his son in that last fight, it was, you saw that conflict within Omni-Man. Now the problem is Omni-Man killed a lot of innocent and vulnerable people, so that cannot be that cannot be forgiven. There has to be accountability with that, and it's going to be so interesting. And like I said, I would imagine there's a next season. I hope there is a next season. What the other planets are going to do, because the Viltrumites are incredibly deadly, and they're an empire, and they're just going to keep steamrolling over planets because, you know, this superiority, that's what they do. And that is apparently their policy, which is a very, very dangerous one. So yeah, and then all the other characters, all the other superheroes, from, you know, the even the ones that we didn't know that well, you saw just through the action what they could have been like. You know, you didn't really get to know too many of them, the ones that were killed quick, but you got to know the new Guardians of the Globe and their character developments, from, you know, Robot, from Rex to Adam Eve, to all of these different characters who you think are villains, and then they turn, and then they end up, you know, working or living within the gray, as Cecil says. I think Cecil said that. So it's you know, it's all these different things and all these different strategies that, you know, Cecil was such a good character just because of his leadership skills and the really hard decisions he has to make, and how he was able to, you know, to use all these resources available to him instead of throwing something away. It's like, well, okay, we have this, let's see what we can do in order to defend Earth from something as powerful and as deadly as Omni-Man. So, you know, there's the physical game, and then there's the mental game, which has to be in balance in order to go through this this conflict. So, you know, maybe it's just how I was raised, but like it always goes back to the Nazis with me. I am, my dad's side is Jewish background, and they fled in the early 1900s. They fled Russia from a Jewish persecution, and I, probably at too young an age, watched movies about the Holocaust, and I would say, well, why are they killing all these people? And they would say, oh, because they're Jewish. And then I would go, well, wait a minute, aren't we Jewish? And I'm like, well, what the hell? You know, so a lot of my core beliefs, you know, turn back to, all right, well, how do we prevent the Nazis or Nazi equivalents coming back? How do we prevent, you know, the misinformation, the really deadly ideology? And it's not even ideology, it's dogma. How do we prevent that from happening? So it always comes back to me, and the Viltrumites certainly remind me of the Nazis, of you know, this empire that are just trying to take over everything, and they just have this ridiculously supremacist belief that they're better than everybody else, and it's up to everybody to band together and to fight this this evil, this scourge. So it's going to be really fascinating to see what the other planets and other species do, especially ones who are maybe at conflict with humans to begin with, and conflict with each other, and if they can come together to fight the overall greatest evil. And within fighting this greatest evil, maybe there can be some reconciliation, maybe they can come together, who knows. But overall, really good show, and it goes to show, well, there's certainly time and space for a 2-hour movie, an hour and a half movie, because it kind of gets the beginning, middle, and end right away. You don't have to put that much time into it. But something really has to be said now that it's peak TV. It's the greatest time ever to be a fan of TV. How an episodic show that's, you know, where you don't have to wait. I didn't have to wait. I think Invincible was released once a week. I didn't have to wait because I watched it kind of late. Wow, that rhymes. Where I can just go and spend, you know, whatever, 8 hours with these characters and really get to know them on a level that I couldn't during a movie, because there's just that not much time. So it's spending all this time and, you know, and energy, I guess, with these characters, getting to know them. And what I really love about, you know, movies, TV, music, is that you do, and then I come from an acting background too, so it's just through performance how you learn about humanity and the different sides and the different points of view and what motivates people. Actors say, well, what's my motivation? What motivates people to do what they do? So it's certainly an exploration, and the same thing is with books. What makes books so great is, one, the escapism that they provide, but also a really deep dive into humanity and how people think and how they get along. And books are more, they're more active than television. You really have to use your brain because you're reading, while TV, you can kind of drift off. And there's advantages to both, and that's why I think I love both so much. And same thing with music. Music teaches people about humanity, how to feel, where other people are coming from. Or it's kind of like, oh, well, I feel the same way, so that means we're all connected, man. So it's yeah. So overall, just a really good show, and I will watch another superhero show. I also watched Doom Patrol, which I hope to do an episode on as well. That was excellent too. Such a great character study of superheroes and trauma. So I hope to do a deeper dive into that. And then whatever comes our way, peak TV, I will take on. So hopefully you can take on this podcast, but not in a combative way. Hopefully, in a friendly way. Hopefully, I've helped you with your time and energy while you were listening to this. So I thank you for listening. So you can find me on Twitter at MMAM Podcast. You can email me at MMAMpodcast@gmail.com. You can find me on Facebook at MMAM Podcast, and please rate, share, and write a review for this podcast, so hopefully more people can hear it. And what day is today? Oh, well, why would I say that? It's Memorial Day, May 31st, 2021. A lot's happened since the last podcast, but I am fully vaccinated, and so I've stepped a little more out into the world now that now I have that protection. And I have that protection because I have the knowledge about what vaccines are and what they do, and I defer to the experts. And you can find this information, not misinformation, but you can find this information by reading or listening to credible sources of news, whether it's the New York Times, the BBC, USA Today, NPR. These are excellent sources where you can get the information you literally need in order to make a sound judgment, not like the Viltrumites, but you can make a sound judgment on how you can live your life in the least destructive way possible, and how we can get through the turmoil that will most likely always be with us. There will be times of peace, there will be times of conflict, but always with like I guess maybe I'm cynical, or maybe it's a little bit pessimistic, but always seems to be, this bubbling under of turmoil. So it's, passing on the knowledge that we learn through these credible sources onto other people, and hopefully, making our little worlds or our little communities or our little pods safe. So get yourself vaccinated, get out there, and so you can get back out and get back to, what is pre-pandemic, but hopefully not back to what it was always like pre-pandemic. Hopefully it'll be better than what the pre-pandemic was. But, the virus is still out there, and it's probably always going to be out there. So get yourself vaccinated, and, follow the science, follow the rules, and follow the experts, not some influencer that has a podcast, or not someone on YouTube, or not someone through social media, not your friends, cousins, roommates, aunts, brothers, fathers, grandfathers, sons, dog. You want to go to the experts, you want to go to science, you want to go to scientific consensus, so you can protect yourselves, and with this virus, learning how to protect others around you. So, and I want you to listen to this podcast for as long as I do it, and listen to the earlier episodes. And you can do that if you're alive, and if you're well, and if you're healthy. So, I think that's it for me. And take care, everyone. Bye.